Okay, well, now that we've got a bit of an idea of how light works, how to affect the character of that light by making it harder or more soft, manipulating natural light, and then working with artificial lights in the studio. The final aspect that we're going to look at is how we can actually manipulate those artificial lights within the studio to get a more precise and refined look. So the way that we manipulate lights in the studio is through using attachments that connect to the light itself. There are two primary categories that photographers use most of the time. There's the reflector dish and the softbox. Softbox is an attachment that softens the light. There's a few types. There's the strip box, the octagonal, the square. And the way that they work, when light leaves the flash head, it's held within the interior construction of the softbox. There's a metallic surface on the inside of there, and it basically bounces the light around all the interior until at some point that light reaches the edge of the softbox and passes through a diffusion sheet. And the overall effect of this is that it makes the light quite soft. Now, the actual shape of the box itself has a number of characteristics. Now, if you'd imagine a rectangular softbox, it's about the same size and shape of a window. So it's great for creating light that looks like it's been softened and come through a window. Then alternatively, we have the circular or octagonal softboxes. Now, the benefit of these is that they can be quite large relative to how small that you can pack them down to, and they create a more natural catch light. And a catch light is a reflection of the light source in the model's eye. And obviously, if we have a circular or octagonal softbox, they tend to look more attractive than if we have a rectangle or a square. And then the third and final one is, I guess, a form of a rectagonal softbox, and it's a strip box. And it's one where the dimensions are very rectangular, so the long edge is a lot longer than the short edge is short. And these aren't super commonly used anymore. These particular lights are very good for their catch light, and you would see them very frequently used in product photography for wine. So why use the softbox over an alternative method? Well, the big benefit of a softbox is that it's a very fast way to soften the light. We only have to have one piece of equipment that attaches the light source rather than having several different pieces of equipment. The way in which the softbox bounces the light around within the internal structure of the softbox itself, it reduces on hotspots. So a hotspot is basically the brightest point of a light. So if I was to shine a light on a wall, you'd expect there to be a very bright point in the middle, and then it gets gradually less light as it goes out. A softbox cuts down on this even more and creates a relatively even distribution of light across the entire surface area. And then the final benefit of the softbox is that because of the structure that it's attached to, it stops the light, what we call spilling. And spilling is basically where light's leaving our light source and it's going onto parts of the environment we don't want it to. So it gives us more direction and more control over the light source. So when do we want to use it? They're most commonly used when we're photographing people because of the fastest way to get a soft light source. They also because people are pretty consistent, we know roughly how that light source is going to, so we know roughly what that softbox is going to look like on every person. And it enables us to make decisions from memory about how we actually use the light. And then we can use it in product photography because it creates a particular shape catch light. One of the big issues with softboxes is that they're not particularly versatile. So we can't actually decide how far we have the light source from the diffusion material. And the problem with that, we don't have precise control over how diffuse the light source is. So that's where reflectors come. Now, the big difference between a softbox and a reflector is that where if we think about a softbox as being a soft light source, where the light is generally more soft, we can consider a reflector a hard light source. Now, that's a bit of a misnomer because you could have a hard light source using a softbox and a soft light source using a reflector. But generally, the softbox is best for creating soft light, and a reflector is good for creating hard, more directional light. So a reflector is a cone shape that attaches to the exterior of the light source. And again, they likely have a reflective interior. They direct the light and they can have a varying angle on them. And the more pronounced the angle, the further the light is actually projected. So what are the benefits of a reflector? Well, one of them is that it increases the overall power output of a light. They direct the light in the direction that they are facing. So again, they reduce spill. Because of the reflective interior that they have, when their light bounces off of a subject, it actually enhances the level of texture in that subject. So then the final reason why you might want to use a reflector is because they're super versatile. So with a reflector, I can actually control the distance of the light source from my subject, but not only my subject. In between my subject and the light source, I could potentially put in a scrim or some trace paper like I discussed earlier, and that will soften the light source. Now, I could have the light source very, very far away from the product, and that would mean that there is not a lot of fall off across the image. But similarly, I might want it to be a very soft image, So right next to the product, I could have a really, really thick piece of diffusion material, and that will ensure the quality of light is very soft, but that there isn't a lot of fall off within the image. This doesn't cover lighting entirely. There's a few other things that you might want to consider. There's flags and gobos, which you can use to block the light and create different patterns of shadow. You might want to learn about high-speed sync flash, which is a technical skill that enables you to freeze motion in the studio with artificial lighting. Polarized light and cross polarization, which is how you can cut down on certain reflections in the studio. Different colors and gels you can use to change the color of the light. And finally, feathering the light, which is a particular technique which creates a very, very soft and natural gradation of light. So let's recap. We can use flash to sync up with our camera, and that'll allow us to supplement where there isn't enough natural light in the real world, or alternatively, we can cut out all of the natural light and we can use purely flash in the studio. Next, one of the things that we can do is when we're working with artificial light is we can add modifiers to them. One modifier is the softbox. The softbox is a very fast way to create soft light. The shape of the softbox affects the shape of the catch light, which is a reflection of the light source on a shiny surface like someone's eye. And then finally, there are reflectors. Reflectors are a metal cone with a reflective interior that create a hard light source, which are great for increasing the power of a light source and casting it over large distances. They offer a lot more flexibility, but they also do require a more technical know-how.